giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of Selling Travel. This one is a bit of a different episode, but one that I have been asked for repeatedly, and I am so excited to bring it to you. So, ADHD, sales superpower or sales kryptonite? Here's the scoop. I love to sell. I also happen to have ADHD. And for some people, they think that's like the best thing ever. And for others, they will say that's the whole reason that they can't. Again, as I talked in the last episode about my journey and my story, I am not a medical professional. I am not in a position to be able to truly guide you on what you need for ADHD. I'm just here to share my story and hopefully give you a little bit of insight into perhaps those around you or maybe even yourself. Even if you don't have ADHD, you might actually recognize yourself in some of these things. So I want to share with you both the superpower and the kryptonite of all of the little things that will make or break your sales. So as with all things, we're going to start with the kryptonite because let's just get it out there. No sense beating around the bush. So my biggest flaw, if you can call it a flaw, is procrastination. I can procrastinate till the end of time on something because it doesn't have a deadline, because I don't want to, because it's just not quite right. I could give you any number of stories, any number of anything, and it's just not going to get done. Not until the very last moment. Okay, if I was being completely honest, I have written the notes for this episode 5 times. I am actually recording at 9:20 a.m. on the day of release. Why? Because I never got around to actually recording it, even though this is an episode I have wanted so badly to make. Procrastination, no matter whether you're ADHD or not, no matter if it's in your business or in your home life or whatever it is, for some people, it's just how they operate. Procrastination can also be a version of avoidance. Let's be honest. If we think we're going to go into an awkward situation or we're going to go into something that makes us uncomfortable or something that maybe just simply isn't what we were hoping for, oh yeah, procrastination is going to come out. I don't know about you, but when I have something terrible, and that's not even a right way to do it, just something I really, really don't want to do, it rarely makes the top of the list. Now, I've read the book, Eat the Frog First. I get the concept. It's actually a really good concept. Putting it into practice, well, I maybe procrastinated that a little bit. But I will also say that on the days that I eat that frog first, my productivity is through the roof. Now, another one, and again, don't have to be ADHD for this to happen, bored, like bored AF. I will never forget the day. Okay, I struggle with slow talkers. Like to record this episode or any of the episodes, I have to consciously slow down the way I speak because otherwise it's just going to be so fast and then nobody's going to be able to keep up. And then it's just, and and it's just going to go. So a lot of times when I get really excited, maybe not as much now because I have spent the last couple of years consciously working on it, consciously making myself able to do, give presentations in a slower pace. Fun little story, chase a squirrel, speak of ADHD. I had to learn how to slow down because when you're just having a conversation with your friends and you're talking and everybody's like 1, 2 sentences, it's okay. When you are doing a 45-minute podcast, an hour-long keynote, whatever it is, and you are the only speaker, if you don't slow down, there's not enough air inside of you to keep up. So then the body will start gasping air, and then that ends up with all sorts of unfortunateness. But I have had to deliberately slow down the speed at which I talk so that other people can absorb what I'm saying. And that's been something, especially if you have listened all the way back to the beginning, I am sure some of those other episodes, once I got past the point of being nervous all the time, were a lot faster than what I record now. I make a point of really putting in what they would call a pregnant pause, just simply because of that. Okay, let's go back. So there was a Saturday and I was sitting in my office. So this was back in the day when I had the physical office with multiple desks in there for all the different advisors, but it was a Saturday. So my husband had come to the office with me. And there was the sweetest, kindest gentleman. I would say, actually, I would know. He was like late 80s. And he had come in because he needed travel insurance because another agency had quoted him some, and it was absolutely astronomical. Obviously, due to the length he was going to be gone, his age, all of these other sorts of things. So I was able to go through, find him a policy that was significantly less, but still would give him the coverage that he needed. And he was so grateful. Well, the problem is, not that it's a problem, is that he was 87. He was widowed. He was going back home into Europe for the very last time. That brings with it a lot of emotion. And with that emotion comes a need for an outlet. So he proceeded to tell me about every single trip to the homeland, except he was a real slow talker, and he often got it mistaken. So then he would have to go back and adjust what it was that he was saying, because he's like, oh no, that wasn't the trip from 85. That was the trip from 82. Or was it? Maybe that was the trip from 83. Honestly, all due respect, I don't care. And I had a to-do list a mile long. And I sat at the desk and I nodded and I did a lot of, oh, really? Oh, that's lovely. And then after he left, my husband, so kind as he was, he said, you do know your inside face was painted across your outside face. You're going to need to work on that. And I went, oh, I thought I did better. He's like, oh, no, that was the worst I've ever seen. So fortunately, I think because he was his late 80s, he couldn't see properly to see my face. I'm hoping. But full out, it was a 90-minute conversation about all the places he's been over the years. And it was because he would tell a story. I would kind of slip in there. Okay, I need this because I couldn't finish the transaction. And he was lovely and he was kind. And I am so happy that he felt comfortable to be able to share that. But at the same time, he was such a slow talker. I actually had a slow talker, my chemistry teacher, when I was in high school. I remember I would go into his class and within 4 minutes, I was asleep. Best sleep I ever had in my life. Chemistry, 10, 20. Yeah, I made it through chemistry 10, but chemistry 20, like chem 20, poof. Now, I went home and I said to my parents, I'm like, can you please let me drop this class? And my parents were like, no. And then 2 weeks later, my dad attended parent-teacher conferences. He came home and he said, yes. And I said, what changed? She goes, I fell asleep. So I maybe come by my diagnosis hereditarily. But the thing is, though, is that when you are in a sales position, you can't let that inside face come to the outside. You can't let your boredom come into play. And yes, I gave you an example of when it did for me, but it's also so that you can see, one, I have never, ever said I was perfect. In fact, everything I coach on comes from the fact of everything I've screwed up along the way, so that you know that other people are just like you and we are all making that mistake. Another one is perfection. Again, you don't have to be ADHD for this one to hit, but perfection is actually tied into the next one, which is rejection. It's got to be perfect or else it's never going, or they're going to say no. Here's the deal. Perfection is an illusion. Every time you think you got to the line of what was perfection, no, the line's moved. It is impossible to achieve perfection. And yet we allow procrastination to come in because we're looking for that perfection. We're looking for something that doesn't exist. Now, I'm not saying we're going to like only do it part way or that we're going to have to do something. But what I am saying is at some point you got to pull the trigger and you've got to release that proposal. You've got to get it out. Part of rejection is something I've learned in the last couple of years here. ADHD is tied to something called rejection sensitivity disorder. I thought that was a bunch of hooey, but then I was doing some understanding and research on what exactly that meant. And I'm like, oh, I just thought that's who I was, but I get it. And I think from my perspective of it, again, not a medical professional, my brain, when it is going, is thinking not just what's right in front of me, but 7 steps ahead. I have already played out every what if scenario conversation that could possibly take place in the time that you said hello. There is so many other elements that are going on all around me all the time. And so part of that is that they're not always positive. Sometimes they are legitimately rejection is such a primal fear. Because if you think way back to the caveman days, if you were rejected, that meant you were off on your own. And therefore, you weren't going to have the protection of the rest of the community, of the rest of the tribe, of the rest of everybody else, because they live together to protect each other. So rejection will trigger something at such a primal level. I want you to know, if you have this fear of rejection, you're not alone by any stretch of the imagination. But I also want you to understand that sales is entirely a role filled with rejection. It is going to get you rejected over and over and over again. Because here's the scoop. If they say yes right off the bat, you did something wrong. But seriously, there was probably some upsells to be had. There was probably something else that was in there. We want to go through the process to make sure that we're getting them exactly what's the right thing for them. And so you are going to get rejected, even if it is simply just a reflex rejection. Looking for that constant shot of dopamine, that constant thing that's just going to light your brain up like fireworks, can leave you not finishing projects. It can leave you totally disorganized and chaotic. It can leave you leaving things half done. And then the dread when you get pulled back into it to be like, oh, I gotta finish that for real. I get it. If that's how you feel at times, I get it. But here's the scoop. That's part of life. You don't just get to have your kids and when they're 2 be like, yeah, well, I'm over that. I'm going to move on. No, you got to finish what you started. There is so many things in life that we don't want to finish what we started, but yet we need to. And sales is definitely a big part of that. I'm going to talk at the end of the episode about some of the things that will help with that. Now, before I get to that, I want to talk about where it's your superpower. Because let's be honest, it is truly a superpower. If anybody tells you, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, when you say you have ADHD or anything of that nature, I want you to like shove that aside because this is your superpower. You have an ability to think at a pace that they just can't even fathom. You have the ability to solve puzzles in ways they can't imagine. My favorite show, just from the perspective of showing how neurodiverse brains work, is The Good Doctor. And legitimately, when they pan away, when he goes into one of his moments, when he's trying to think it through, and he can visually see it up, across the operating room, and he can see, well, if we do this, do this, do this. Now, I'm not really a visual seer, although I have to put it out visually in order to comprehend it. I will say that I can sit in the silence. Is the only time I sit in the silence, and I can have the puzzle pieces come together. My favorite part of travel sales is to take the puzzle pieces together. And here's the scoop. The puzzle pieces are all flipped over upside down. They're from 5 different puzzles, and I don't even know which one we're working on. But that's how I start. And that's how I build it out. And that is truly my superpower. In order to be able to come up with things that they would never have imagined, to be able to see that surprise and delight on them, to be like, wow, I can't believe you were able to do that. Like, that's insane. That also maybe comes from the hyper focus part of it. When I am in a tunnel and I am going to figure something out, there is almost nothing that can stop me. And I will sit and just figure that out. I will know all the different moving pieces. I will have them all lined up. I did a lot of my itinerary planning or putting together what it was that I was going to ask for the suppliers to quote me on. I did that all on pen and paper. Then I moved it onto a computer. Now, maybe you work better on a computer. To me, a computer is like the world's biggest shiny object. It is by far the biggest distraction in my business. And I get you're probably sitting there going, but everything's done on a computer. I know. Talk about some inner conflict. But I put it all on pen and paper because there's just something that computes better in my brain. You want to figure out, how does your brain work best? Does it work best in a spreadsheet? Does it work best pen to paper? What is it that gets you clear? I get curious, like wildly curious. I would say that has been truly my number one sales superpower, because when somebody says they want to go somewheres, I always want to know why. Because here's the scoop. When you understand the why, you will also know if they chose the right location. I'm also going to tell you, most of the time, they did not. They were told that they should go here by so and so, or that they should do this by so and so. But when we drill down to the why, no, so and so knew nothing. And so I was able to find them exactly what they wanted, even though they had absolutely no words for it. They had no idea what it was that they were looking for, because they were only going based on what people were telling them. Again, this is why I despise intake forms in terms of give me your budget, give me your destination, give me your dates, give me your people. Okay, I'll give you a quote. Those are completely ineffective. They are never going to get you what you are looking for to build that relationship with a client, to establish your authority. But also, too, your clients only know what they know to ask for. Your job is to be able to have the conversations, build the rapport, and go deeper so that you can help them to truly get what they want. They don't do this for a living. They don't do this every day. They don't know what to ask for. Get curious. It truly can be your biggest superpower. You got to keep up with the scattered clients, or I can keep up with scattered clients. Reading my notes. Yeah. When my clients come in and they're like, I want to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and oh, well, maybe over here. Okay, well, what about there? Never, ever should you be quoting the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe all at the same time for the same client for the same trip. When your clients come in, when your clients reach out to you, they don't know what they don't know. It is your job to pull all of that together into a formula that is easy for them to understand. It's easy for them to comprehend what's going on. And it's easy for them to be able to be like, oh, now I get it. When your clients are scattered all over, they need you more than any other time, because you're going to be what walks them through the different options. You're going to be the thing that makes it so that they understand. Take all of that scattered, pull it into one place. I write out everything that they're looking for, and then we prioritize the trips. And I will say, these are 3 different trips. What is it that you're wanting to get out of this one? Oh, we just need to relax. Great. Then let's look at the Caribbean. Let's get you into that Caribbean vacation now. And then let's start planning that African safari for next year. And let's do the river cruise the year after, or do it the other way. But we have those conversations. This is why my clients are never booking just one trip when they're working with me. I am already working on the next and the next and the next. You want to make sure that you're having those conversations with your clients so that you can be positioned to already be part of the process, so that when they're ready to do the next one, well, they're not going to call anybody else. You've already had the conversation. You've already got the ball rolling. And you also know at exactly what point that you need to be contacting them. Outbound reach to them, so that you can have those conversations. You can initiate and be like, okay, we're in the right zone. We need to start talking about this. We need to get this on the books. Instead of just waiting, hoping that they come back to you. As amazing as we are, they forget who we are. Because as important as we are to ourselves, we're not as important to them. And that can be as similar as, have you ever gone into a store and been helped by a sales clerk? You may or may not remember their name. You may or may not even remember what they look like. You may or may not even remember if they were short or tall, if they were a woman, a man, if they were blonde, bald, redheaded, like whatever it is. I just remember how they made me feel. Oh, you had that really good sales clerk 6 months ago. Would they still be? We have no idea. They don't necessarily remember the business that they dealt with. So you need to make sure that you're staying in front of them. And when you can pull that scatter in together, it just reaffirms for them that they're in the right place. Okay. So to wrap up, what can you do? Well, here's the scoop. You've got to have a plan in place. And by that, I mean, and I teach this in Curious to Booked all the time, when you are doing the proposal, you must have the follow-up date ready, so that when you are ending your consultation, you are going to book in their calendar for delivery of the proposal. Why? Because it gives you a timeline. We already discussed you need a deadline, or else you are going to procrastinate that till the ends of time. You need to have that deadline in place so that you know when you need to hit it. 2, you've already got the follow-up in place, because otherwise, out of sight, out of mind. It is amazing what I can put into a mental box and then forget is there. It's like, just close the drawer. You've got to be prepared to ask questions, which means you gotta stop talking. That's a hard one. I don't know if you've noticed. I have a podcast where I get to be the only talker most of the time. We are returning to interview episodes. We will have some more of those coming up once we get into May and beyond. I've actually got quite a few of them already recorded in the hopper. I was just doing some solo ones for a little bit here. But I am used to being able to do a lot of the talking. So shutting up and listening was something I really had to practice, especially when they start to go off the rails a little bit, the more scattered they are. So it's knowing when to interject, when to ask more questions, when to ask the right questions, and what are those right questions. You got to work on the things that light you up. So when you are picking your niche, and I have heard other coaches say, it can't just be your passion. It can't just be this, that, the other. It's got to be what's going to make you money. Here's the scoop. If you are somebody chasing dopamine, I promise you, unless money is your dopamine, you've got to pick a product you enjoy working on. And even if money is your dopamine, if you don't enjoy working on it, you are going to hit that procrastination level full out. So I cannot stress this enough. It has got to be something that lights you up, something that you enjoy working on. That way, when you get those one or two one-offs that something's gone sideways and you've got to help out, you can get through it. But if you, I can't imagine building a business where every single day I hated what I did. That's why so many of us don't have jobs anymore. And instead, we're running travel agencies or businesses within the travel industry. I loved selling travel, but I am completely lit up with coaching travel advisors, helping them to get through the stumbles and the struggles that I went through in building my own agency, in the things that it took to train the advisors that worked for me, the ones that were independent versus the ones that were inside. My whole world is built on what lights me up. And because of that, I have the most freeing life. I love what I do. I can't imagine waking up every day thinking, oh, I got to do that. No, I love what I do. I have loved what I have done for nearly 20 years. There's been elements, sure, that I haven't cared for. That's part of why I closed my physical office and decided to go full out into coaching. As much as I love selling travel back in 2017 and 2018, it was really the summer of 2018 that I noticed it when I was pacing that office like a caged lion. I'm like, nope, not supposed to be doing this anymore. And that's when nudge to coach full-time came in. I have to recognize and admit my weaknesses. I love the thrill of the hunt. I love the sales side when working with clients. Love it. Cannot tell you how much I love it. All of the follow-up details afterwards, all of the set this transfer, that transfer, all of that. No, not my favorite. That was a bit of a push. And especially when I would get busy. Looking back, had I had the right assistant who could take that on, I actually said this the other day, I can't imagine where I would be in travel sales because I know where I was at before. Like I have sold tens of millions of dollars in travel sales over the years. I can't imagine where I would be if I would have had a team. And I do fully admit it would have taken a team to keep up to my ability to sell, to process everything behind the scenes. If my only job would have been to work with clients, to ask them questions, to figure out the puzzle, all of these sorts of things, wow, I can't even imagine. But that's a world of coulda, woulda, shouldas. And so now I look at where I'm at in today's business. And so I'm actually just writing up job descriptions. It will either be one unicorn or it will be a role for two different people. Because we are growing and we are expanding and there's so much more that we're capable of. It's just the behind the scenes things that need to be done. There's a lot of automations that need to be added in. And I know I said before, I don't love automations, but there is things that need to be done. The blogs need to have better show notes. They need to make sure that all the links are there. All of these things take so much time, and that's not my zone of genius. I admit it. That type of thing. And then to set up the ManyChat, because we're going to be doing automations with our social medias coming up in the next month or two here. I tested it out a while ago. Once we get it fully going, then I'll do an episode on that. But that's where it says like comment podcast, and I'll send you the link. So that allows us to be freed up. But there's still somebody that needs to monitor that. There's still somebody that needs to be able to go in and set up those connections. And then if people are commenting podcast and nobody's getting anything, well, then we need to make sure that there's not something broken behind the scenes. My final tip is, for lack of a better term, I lie to myself. Hear me out. I have a little egg timer on my desk. And so I will tell myself, you need to send emails for 10 minutes. And I will set a timer for 10 minutes. And sometimes it's only for 5. It really depends on how badly I don't want to do something. I will shorten that time. And here's the scoop. If when the timer goes off, I'm done, then I'm done. But if when the timer goes off, I'm like, you know what? I'm already here anyways. I'm just going to keep on going. I keep on going. But I need to do something to convince myself to get started. So if that means telling myself just 5 minutes. Funny, that was the same theory I gave myself when it came to getting on the treadmill. Just 5 minutes. Because once you get the shoes on, once you get the workout clothes on, once you get, this, that, the other going, well, then frig, you might as well just keep going. But it's how do you get started? And if getting started is not one of your superpowers, instead it's your kryptonite, you've got to set a low bar, because it's not based on motivation. It is based on momentum. My world does not revolve around motivation. It revolves around momentum. How do I get going? I also know what are the things that are going to stop me from getting going. What are the things that are going to be like, sorry, nope. I do this, I am done. I know if I turn on the television during the day, I'm done. I am done. My brain checks out. We are over. That's all she wrote, folks. And so I need to know that I'm not doing that. You've got to figure out what it is that you need. For myself, I needed a separate office outside of my home. Yes, I still record my podcasts at home. I actually record a lot of the things that I need that guaranteed internet, because my office building doesn't really have the best. But when I'm doing the behind the scenes things, I can absolutely do that from the office, do that away from my home, because there's no distractions. It is just my own space. There's no going and putting laundry in. There's no going and doing this, that, the other. I have 10 feet by 10 feet. No, it is not a prison cell. But I have my little 100 square feet with my desk, with my files, with my little mini fridge, and away we go. And I absolutely love it. In fact, I had taken an extended period away from going to the office, and I started to feel that creep of burnout coming back, because I was like, oh, I'm going to go work, and I'm going to go work downstairs for a couple of hours just so I can get things done, because I just didn't have the energy or the drive to go to the office. And by last week, I had said to my husband, I'm like, no, I officially need to go back to the office to work, because I can feel that constant pull of, but you got more to do. There's more that needs to be done. I need to create that separation. I need to have that defined boundary. See, if you don't have those defined boundaries, it is a whole lot harder to maintain that separation going forward. And that separation is what is going to keep you from staying in paralysis, staying in overthought, staying in burnout, and all of the other sorts of things. ADHD truly is your superpower. If you don't have ADHD, I promise you, you are still full of superpowers. You just need to uncover what it is. Maybe it's the way that you connect with your clients. Maybe it's the attention to detail that you have that is your superpower. You need to find what is your superpower, while at the same time also acknowledging what's your kryptonite. Because if we don't acknowledge what our weaknesses are, our strengths are all for nothing. When I did that retreat a couple of weeks ago, one of the things we did was the Clifton Strengths Assessment. And so it gave us gave us our 34 strengths, and it ranked them. And I now understand myself at a whole other level based on what my top 5 are. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Then I looked at my bottom 6 and I went, oh, that makes more sense. See, understanding my weaknesses made me better understand my strengths. Because a lot of times when we have a weakness, if we're not prepared to look at it, we'll think, no, I got that under control. Because a lot of us, our weakness is admitting that we're weak. And I'm not saying you're weak on everything. And I'm not saying you are a weak person. But every single human being has a weakness. But they also have so much strength. Even if you don't see it in yourself, trust me, we see it in you. You are strong. You are going to do amazing things. And I can't wait to be able to watch you do it. Until next time, happy selling.